Thank you, everybody, for taking time to log in to the Resource Associates webinar series. I'll hand over the session to our moderator, Nick Cassidy, to just kick us off. Nick?
Great, thanks, Shirley, and thanks everybody. Good evening. I think it's evening now. Glad to see that we are able to join in at this point. I'm sure there are a couple of us who are still joining in. Most guys, I'm sure, are just plugging off work, so they will be getting us as we kick off. So great, welcome all of you to this session. And just thanking Resource Associates for giving us this platform. And as we kick off, I would want to invite them as our official hosts to just give us some quick introductory remarks. And then after that, then I will also introduce our amazing panelists. I will also introduce the topic for the day, and then we will get into the motion of the subject matter for this evening. We have about 1.5 hours ahead of us. So sit back, relax, and let's engage. Going to be a very interactive session. Looking forward to it. And I'm sure you as well are looking forward to this conversation. So let's see how that goes. So I don't know if Becky or Kezia, would you want to just quickly welcome all of us and then we can start?
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I hope you're all doing well. My name is Kezia from Resource Associates. I'm the HR business analyst. And I look forward to having a good session with you guys and learning a lot from our panelists. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. This is Esther from Resource Associates. We're looking forward to having a meaningful conversation with each and every one of you. Karibuni sana.
Thanks, Esther. Thanks, Kezia. Great. So today we are going to be, engaging on, a very dear topic to me, and as well as most of us, whether you are in full-time employment, in consultancy, or in any type of engagement. I think for the last 2 or 3 years, we've all witnessed, quite a fundamental shift in the mode of work, and what we are seeing today is totally a different picture from what we were used to about 3 years ago before COVID. And this has been the fundamental shift to remote work. And of late, we're also seeing most organizations adopting the hybrid model of work. So I'm joined today, very fortunate to join today by 2 exceptional panelists. I will introduce them shortly. And then, we'll be able to have this engagement for the first 45 minutes to 1 hour, engaging with the panelists. As we do that, I would like to encourage all of us to post your questions on the chat. Any comments you have on your day-to-day experience with remote work, if you have teams working remotely, or if this is something that you're considering within your workspace at the moment. So feel free to engage on the chat. We will have the first session go for about 15-20 minutes, and then we will pause and reflect, take any comments on the chat, for any questions coming through as well, and just to ensure that we give each and every person a chance to engage fully into the conversation. We will also at the end have a small intro for what on who Resource Associates is, what they do, and why this webinar series is of importance to really ensure that the community that they engage with every day is fully on board and feel part of this series as well. We will also have a session where we can, hear from, some of our participants who are joining us as well from their experience. So we want to keep it, really, really engaging and, of course, learning from each other. I think my biggest belief is that we learn every day, and, no idea, no opinion is too small, to really add value. So we'll just keep it very, very open. Our topic for today is around managing performance in a remote working environment. I think all of you will agree with me that this kind of working environment, remote working environment, requires a very nuanced approach, given the challenging dynamics involved. It has its own unique challenges, it has its own pain points. And so we want to go deeper today to really understand what does it mean, or what does it take to optimally manage performance within a remote working environment. We will be exploring a couple of sub areas around, goal setting, managing performance, teams, distributed teams. We'll be looking at how do you manage things like, employee well-being if they're not close to you in the office. How do you set clear expectations for the different teams? How do you do your regular check-ins? How do you ensure there is adequate autonomy and trust with the teams that you're not able to supervise within reach? How do you ensure that you're able to maintain an adequate level of productivity across the teams? How do you ensure that you have adequate collaboration and productivity across the board? And how do you ensure that each and every person is really putting their best and bringing all the needs they have to the business and at work? Yeah, and so these are, amongst many of the other areas we'll be looking at. Just by introduction, my name is Nick Kasidi. I am the founder and managing partner of Pan-African Talent Hub, which is an outfit supporting African businesses in all matters: talent, executive search, capacity building, leadership development, and coaching across the continent. We work with a number of associate partners across different countries within Africa, and really glad to be part of this platform today. Allow me to now welcome my distinguished panelists. I'll start with Vivian, and maybe Vivian, you could put your video on so that we can see you. So Vivian is a very good friend of mine. We've known each other for some time. Let me just check. Vivian is a very seasoned strategic human resource practitioner with over a decade of experience. Currently works as a HR business partner, and some main expertise around HR analytics, employee relations, change, workforce planning, mediation. She's had various roles spanning from the M-Pesa Foundation Academy, NIVAS, amongst others. Vivian is currently pursuing her PhD in business admin, focusing on strategic management. She's also a certified HR practitioner and mediator as well. Vivian also serves as the board member in several not-for-profit organizations, and her expertise also ranges in the areas around governance, risk, financial oversight, human capital strategy, policy development, conflict resolution, amongst others. She is also an advocate for mentorship and empowerment. Finally, she's also a Rotarian, held a number of leadership positions within Rotary International, and we are really glad to have you join us today, Vivian. So feel most welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Our second panelist, we have Faith Gitonga. Faith is a digital transformation leader with over 10 years of experience in Africa. Faith currently leads tech and digital transformation at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Her previous role was, amongst others, country manager at Cellulant, digital transformation lead at Oracle, and then her expertise mainly is around innovation, business development, strategic partnerships, culture, and she serves currently thinking about 4 boards. She holds an executive certification from Yale, Berkeley, UC Berkeley, decision making and innovative change leadership. She also has a master's in psychology and is passionate about unlocking Africa's potential through meaningful impact and digital revolution. So welcome, Faith. As you can see, we have high impact delegates and panelists amongst us. So without much further ado, I would want us to go into the discussion. As we go into the discussion, the first question I would like to throw out to our audience today, and as you think about this, is I want you to think of the one concern you have around remote work. Just one concern you have around remote work or even hybrid working, if that is really the model you have adopted. And just put in the chat one concern that you have. Yeah, as we move into this, I'll probably start with Vivian. You know, as I was reflecting about this session today, you know, so many things came to mind. And I said, you know, how challenging can it be managing teams within, you know, an environment where you probably working together, you're very close to them, but at the same time, you're not close to them. At the same time, you're also trying to ensure that you represent the interests of the company on productivity, while at the same time also balancing the well-being of the employee. So ensuring that they're able to give you their best, ensuring that they're okay giving you their best, but also ensuring that as much as you're not fully in control of what they do, because they're not in the office, they're still able to give optimal productivity and performance. Yeah, so I don't know if this is something that you have experienced, Vivian, and if you can talk through a bit about it as we kick off.
Good afternoon, Nick. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to have these conversations in regards to remote work. What Nick has said affects so many of us in very many ways. My current workplace, we have a model. And in our model, the first thing that we did in terms of remote, we have a flexibility work policy. So in our policy, it outlines when you will be able to work in the office, when you'll be able to work remotely, and if you come in early, what time will you be able to leave? And above all, at what time must all of us be online to ensure that whether you are remote or in the office, you are able to engage. So the first thing is just ensuring that you have a policy, and the policy is signed off, accepted at EXCO level, and it goes up to the board and it is signed. Then we bring it down to us and we ask ourselves, who will be able to go home? So for example, you work in the customer area department and you'd like to work at home remotely. How sure you'll be able to serve our customers? And how sure we will be able also to interact with you? So of course, we'll be able to create number one, you'll be able to sign in and say, I will be able to work maybe 1 or 2 days in a week, which will be signed off. In my 2-3 days in a week, between the time of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m., you will be online. And you should ensure that wherever you are, you can be able to be audible and you'll have a very strong Wi-Fi or your network is strong. And then also we'll ensure that you have visibility. So between the times of 9 to 4 and except at your lunch hour, we'll expect you to have your video on so that you can be able to engage with you. Okay, I know there are some seasons whereby maybe someone is doing a presentation and you can go offline. But when you're working on the remote, that's one of the ways we can engage with you. Number one. Number two, we also request that when you are away from us, you're able to answer your emails promptly. I know sometimes they can come in waves, but just we request that within a timeline. For example, you receive an email at 9:05. How long should it take you before you engage with the person? Because business is a whole circuit. So when you don't respond, another person could need that information. So we also put a timeline in terms of when to respond. And when you don't respond, we ask a colleague to intervene. So that's just a way to ask ourselves, are you okay? Maybe something could have happened to you and you're far. So as you work from home, we also have an alternate telephone number, an alternate person to reach you at. For starters, that's where I'll start, Nick.
Yeah, yes. I like that approach, and it's very, very structured. It really simplifies the approach, and I think everybody seems clear on what is expected of them when they're working remotely. Not so sure if you also touched on this. There are also some teething problems with virtual connects. So I'll tell you that I've had a couple of scenarios where you have a meeting scheduled, say, for 5, and it's a very critical meeting because probably you're going to present something on the board, a board paper or something, and then 2 minutes to the meeting, then your Wi-Fi goes off completely, or your connection goes off, and you're the main person or the main driver for this meeting. I don't know what have some of the learnings you guys have seen, or some of the best practice you could share with us when it comes to connecting virtually with teams.
I'll also add, and then I can also allow Faith, my colleague, to also answer. So for us, what I've mentioned is that we ensure when you are working remotely, there's someone who can be able to match what you're almost saying word to word. So that if you're the facilitator of a training, that we have shared drives. So the shared drives, and through the Google Doc, you're able to share your work there. It becomes very easy so that if you go offline, somebody else can be able to present or speak into what you are doing, not exactly in your own words, but as a cover-up. In terms of people being let down by technology, we have had that severally. And it's a challenge and it's work in progress. So we always say the first place for you to work is the office because there's an instant generator. But if it does fail out, we always have a plan B.
Great. I like that plan B. I mean, you always have a backup because anything can happen. Some of these things you can't anticipate. But I think if you have a full team behind you, if you go offline, of course, if you're probably in the same meeting with your boss, he or she is also very well briefed on what you're about to present, so you have a good cover. So sometimes that really helps. I saw someone asking in the chat around what tools or support do you give your teams working remotely? I don't know, Faith, if you want to come in on this one.
Thank you, Nick. And Vivian, you gave such a fantastic preamble to this topic. So I think probably just to comment on what Vivian was talking about first, I think when it comes to remote working, I'm always thinking it's not just about being liberal on where people can work. It's also being a little liberal on people defining how they work. And I've seen that there's been more success that way. So when you have remote working with too much around it, then it's not successful. They can as well just come to the office. So then you should be able to also give liberty in that sense on the how of working. Because the beauty of remote working is that then people get to choose the sort of places they want to work. So in case I want to work from, I don't know, even another country, I can do that, etc. and also being able to define the how of working as long as I meet my KPIs. And what I've found is that now when it comes to performance and things like that, if you haven't defined or let that definition be there, then people are frustrated in that sort of remote work. So then it's easier to set up for them to be rather in the office. And especially for roles where you find people sitting in different countries and things like that, where the timelines are different, and the roles, like I know Vivian talked about customer service, which perhaps makes more sense for them to be in the office. If you're thinking about someone who's an engineer, a technical person, maybe I'd rather work midnight till morning, as long as I get the work done. And then the second part, where you asked about the Wi-Fi, etc. What I've seen work as you set up the policies, like Vivian mentioned, is to also see how to support your teams with the benefits for that. So where you give, Wi-Fi as a benefit, bundles as a benefit. I've seen organizations which will also do alternate devices as a benefit, so that in case, it's your work machine, you have an office phone, that's also loaded with bundles as a benefit. So then it's then work is able to continue. I like what Vivian talked about, just making sure documents are online and in a shared folder. So then that way, if you miss out, then somebody else can present on your behalf. And so I've seen some of those things really help in that sense. And to now maybe give a bit of a story, if that's okay, Nick. I noticed during COVID, I just joined a new role. I just joined Cellulant, and I remember going for almost 6 to 8 months without meeting any team member physically. So you're meeting all these people online, having conversations with them online. This was when Zoom just came into being. So people are having issues with that. Nobody wants to put their video on as well because, I'm at home, maybe my hair is not done, my makeup is not done, I'm dressed in my home clothes, etc. And just being able to also set up policies around how meetings are run. And so some of the things I did was to have a rule to have the videos on. I also set up trainings where we discussed now meeting cadence on virtual meetings. And the third thing that really helped was that I also did checkups. It's easy to set up meetings and and also have KPIs, but I also just did checkups as well. So then that way you can be able to check, are people meeting expectations? Are people communicating as they should? So then that covers you, because I think one of the biggest concerns that comes up with remote working is that people always wonder, as a leader, you're like, is someone doing my work or are they doing their own things, And you worry, even in a call like this, if the video is not on, are people listening or are they doing their own thing? So video is a good thing. Making sure 100% participation, everyone must say something with their video on, and doing just sort of checkups really worked for me, just in terms of making sure that the remote working was successful. Yeah.
Yeah, no, very, very, very profound, Faith. Someone actually adding on the chat that have a team of software developers who claim to be productive at night when the systems are not overloaded with users and not during the day. So we try to incorporate having staff coming to the office a few days of the week, but it was met with resistance from the team. So how do you manage such employees? So you have preferences, right? So I'll tell you what, I'm not so much a morning person, but anytime from now onwards until past midnight, I am the most productive person. So how do you handle such type of employees?
Maybe I can share from my experience handling tech teams. And I agree with you, Nick. I'm also more nocturnal, like I'm alive from this point on till around 2 a.m. But what happens with tech teams, and the tech teams I dealt with, you know, you are also finding a lot of them fall into the Gen Z bracket. And so this is funny, and I hope it makes sense though. So what we did in one of the places we worked where we were dealing with tech guys, a lot of these tech guys, like I said, are young, single, you know, living in their own homes or maybe living with their parents. So what we did is that we started offering them meals in the office for free. You know, so we did simple meals in the office for free. So then that way, and we said those meals are offered Monday to Friday. And coming to the office moved from 1% to almost 60%. You know, and if you sit with a lot of these young people, they'll tell you, you know, because I have this meal and it's for free, I don't have to figure out lunch and dinner. And so they'll come into the office. So it's also, I think, important to understand the demographic you're working with. Probably if you're talking about, you know, people who are married, maybe have people who help them cook and things like that, that's not as enticing for them. You'd have to think of something else. But we did that and also changed the policy. Instead of 100% remote, even for the tech teams, they had to at least be in the office 3 times a week. And this was, of course, after COVID, where we were 100% home. Now we were trying to bring in the blend and all that. And so I think you can come up with creative ways like that. And what you find is that there are advantages of remote working, but there are also heavy disadvantages. So you have to try and make sure you have that balance. I'll give you something else that I've seen work, and this is an organization a friend works for. And so the rule that they have is that you can work remotely from anywhere in the world, but they'll cap it to the period. So you can work remotely for, let's say, a month, but you have to now come back to work for like a week or 2 weeks. Or you can work remotely in, let's say, in Africa, from any country in Africa, but it can't be outside Africa, you know? So then you can cap it depending. So then that way people are easy to access. The time difference is not too bad to influence what's happening. And then I think another thing that has worked, especially with the technical guys who have to work through the night, technology has changed. So now technology has ways of where you can still put in biometrics, still track time of what someone has done on the system and how long as well. So you can use that. And then finally, set clear and specific KPIs. You know, so then that way, if the person spent the whole day shopping and the night watching movies, as long as they've met their KPI, then we are good to go. And I think that's the give and take of remote working, that you also cannot micromanage. You just have to also have faith in the people you hire, that their focus is right and that they'll meet the KPIs. And so if you set certain OKRs and they don't meet them, then it doesn't matter if they're telling you they're working every day. The OKRs are not met. And that's how you measure the performance and productivity.
Yeah. You bring in a very, very important point there around, you know, setting very clear KPIs, you know, with the teams, and just ensuring that, you know, you have faith in them to really work to deliver on those KPIs without really micromanaging. I think most of this current generation, especially the demographics we're working with today, like the Gen Zs and stuff, most of them do not appreciate being micromanaged. I think so. Once you understand and align, okay, this is what we need to do, this is where we need to go, this is your role, this is, you know, what I expect from you by this time, and this is the support that I'm going to provide to you. So just do your thing. So you realize that they tend to just pick it and run with it. What they do now with the rest of their time, you really don't want to know. But I mean, so long as then you get the output that you need. The other bits to this that, you know, as you're talking, I'm just thinking, how do you drive that culture of high performance and self-discipline, you know, above and beyond, you know, setting those clear KPIs and just ensuring that people are still able to connect, though remotely, but, you know, still feel like part of a very, you know, close-knit team working together to achieve shared outcomes. I don't know if Vivian, you want to come in on this one.
Yes, very interesting. And what you've said, especially in terms of productivity and ensuring that people connect. The good side, and I really liked what Faith said, there's a very good side of working from remotely, and you can work anywhere. People at the onset, they will really perform. But as they get comfortable, you start seeing them, if they used to arrive at 8 o'clock, they've put on their machines, they are up and running. You'll come to discover 9:30. Then of course we'll have the ones who say, I'll work at night, and we'll have all these challenges. So you'll have people who are not balancing. So I'll start first with the KPIs. So what we have done, and the companies that I have been including where I am, we currently use SuccessFactor, where we put a minimum of 4 objectives and a maximum of 8 objectives in terms of your key performance objective. And we also just use like what the balance scorecard is, where we know there's people, there's finance, there's customers, and there's strategy. So you look at your KPIs and you ask yourself, what are you doing in terms of finances? Are you in sales where you're supposed to increase your sales? Are you in maybe HR or procurement where you're supposed to lower the costs? So you need to know in terms of finances. And this is aligned to the business. The business says, because if it's a profit-making company, our projections for the year, maybe 2024, 2025 is 100 million. How do we achieve it? Either we increase or also reduce. So whatever KPI you do, you align it to the business. In terms of people, we ensure that you put a people objective. The people objective will be like, I will ensure that I attend meetings. In my meetings, I'll be able to lead and I'll make a presentation. You put it as a KPI. So it becomes very interesting that even if you're in a team, and in that team meetings in a month, you will have maybe 3 or 4 meetings, but in that 3 or 4 meetings, you will have a clear agenda, and each agenda will be driven by one person, and you'll drive it. So it's just interesting in terms of how you will engage them, that everybody will present. There are the shy ones, and they're the ones who are outspoken. And even sometimes the shy ones might even tell the other people to speak to them, but we've given them that opportunity just to speak in terms of their team. Then, of course, we look in terms of the strategy. We bring it down to the department where you are. We will just know, are you in sales and development? Are you in marketing? Are you in finance? Are you in HR? We just want to know what strategies does this business have? Because it's important to know where are we aligned. What does the business see us in short term, 2-3 years, in the middle term, long term? So even if you are someone in the company, you can say, I want to grow in this company because I'm seeing the projections of the company. Because if the employees don't see growth, if the employees don't see that this company is there in the long term, they start bailing out. So that's just one way of them engaging, and also engaging for the employees. And then lastly is in terms of the appraisal. So initially we used to have annual, but because of the flexi hours, so we have quarterly and half yearly. We just have a chat and chat. We call it a career day. You just have, you lock time in terms of a Google Meet, put it in the Google Meet calendar. Then you are able to have a chat and chat with you and your supervisor, with you and your teams. I've been able to deliver this. This is where I am. And then again, we will review. And this one sums up in terms of your performance appraisal. Lastly, ensuring that we actually take. We ensure that not only are our meetings with an agenda, sometimes we also just have a breakfast. People just drink tea, just normal tea. And if someone is blessed or touched, they can bring something to eat with the tea. The others, the younger ones, they decide, we are very near town, let's go to a Nyama Choma joint. They identify just a nice place. Over lunch hour, they walk. They go eat, they come back. They're working remotely, but there's one day in a week where we work. We just decide, what will you do in that meeting? So it's just a way of how do you engage them, and they find it in their own way. And then this is reported by their head of departments that come into the monthly report in terms of engagement. So we know this department did this department does that, or some departments don't even do it at all. Then lastly, in terms of productivity, the employees who you must follow, whether they are working in the office or they are working at home, you will have to follow them. So of course, as HR, we have to find a way of how to balance. How do we ensure that you work, And if you don't work, how do we exit you out? I'm sure we'll have those conversations again. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Vivian. I like your last point around, the employees that you have to follow. Some of them you can't assume that everybody will toe the line and will be as aligned to the business and to the ways of working as you would expect. So you bring a very important point, and of course something that we can go further and maybe hear from the others in the room of their experiences with similar scenarios. I don't know, Kezia, if we have any burning questions on the chat, if you can just quickly check that for me, related to this conversation, and we can then pick it as we go.
From the chat, you've been answering some of the questions as we are going, the main questions that have been asked. But the first question that you ask people to post about the things that they have issues with, about remote working environments or hybrid working environments, such as employee well-being, that Mildred posted, is something that you could maybe talk about, Nick.
Okay. That's fine. I think, yeah, so employee well-being, and I'll bring in Faith as well. One thing that people do care about so much is really, how they feel, how they bring themselves to work. And that brings a lot of question around, are your people in the right mind frame to do what they need them to do? Are they well positioned? What is their current personal situation? And does that personal situation hinder them or, promote them to do their best work possible? So that brings in the question of, how am I supporting my teams who are working remotely, in terms of their well-being? So, you'd find some places, some managers who have, take it upon themselves to do regular check-ins. So you have the Monday stand-up meetings. Some would have, quarterly lunches every so often. Some would have, the monthly Friday, meetups, or the football clubs. You just find a place at a venue where you bring everybody to come in and share their experiences in form of sports. So there are different ways in which you can find, can make this as informal as possible without losing focus on the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is what Vivian spoke about, aligning your goals, your objectives to the strategy of the business, and having a shared vision of where we want to go and, working towards this as a team. Yeah, but also not losing focus of the fact that, working from home or remotely also comes with a challenge of, isolation and people being in very lonely spaces over very prolonged periods of time. So how you navigate that as a business, as a manager, is very, very important. Sometimes you have someone who's always been the life of the party, or the person who talks most in the team, and then at some point they just go missing for weeks, and then you're wondering, okay, is Faith still around? What happened to her? Yeah, but you see, if you don't check on your people regularly and find out, hey, are you okay? Is there anything I can support you with? Any struggles? Is everything okay at home? Then you can't tell what people are going through, and that really then brings in the question of well-being. Because if I'm not okay, then personally I might be able to be okay even at work. I don't know if Faith, you wanna chip in a little bit on that employee well-being bit, if there are any scenarios you've come across.
Sure. And I think when it comes to well-being, I think, to be honest, well-being, and just I saw a question on the chat also asking about different personalities and things like that. I think all these things feed off culture, right? And I'm happy that Vivian is here, because one of the biggest things that we talk about when it comes to people is that, you know, are we handling people as people or resources? You know, so are we thinking about Faith as a person, a human being with feelings, with a family, with you know, with a journey that they're going through life, or just as a resource that is supposed to deliver a certain number? And I think that's the groundbreaking aspect of people management. Just being able to figure that out. It's also not just a HR role, it's a role of every leader in the business to just be able to always be looking at, I have 27 people in my team, I have 10 people in the team. What are they really going through? And I think just being able to lead from that authentic point of view is a big win. And I think leaders who lead that way will succeed in the days to come, because especially if you're managing Gen Zs, you'd have to be able to think that way. And I tend to think not just Gen Zs, even millennials and things like that, you know, they know their rights. They want you to think about the whole person, not just what number I can deliver for you. But having said that, I'll just give some few quick examples. I remember in my days at Oracle, having a boss who would do daily check-ins, because of course Oracle is a global company. My boss sat out of UAE, you know, so you're not seeing him every day, and he wanted to just make sure everyone was good. So we'd have daily check-ins first thing in the morning, and we discuss nothing to do with work. You know, so you just get onto the call, your video has to be on. You know, in my Oracle days, we were doing the Zoom live way before Zoom was a thing because of COVID. And so you join these calls, and it starts with each person and goes like, Faith, you know, what's happening? How are your kids? Asks the next person, Nick, how is your soccer team going? You know, and just goes through everyone. And it was a quick meeting. It didn't even run for more than 25 minutes. But in that time, he's quickly checked how everyone is. And then we will have our other check-ins where it's numbers. And that sort of builds such a good culture. You know, when you know someone cares about not just your work, you're also loyal. You want to perform, you know, because you don't want to let this person who cares about you that way down. And so then you find productivity just, you know, just goes up because of something like that. And through the period of having this leader, his team was best performing in the Africa region. You know, and that just goes to show you how small cultures like that, you know, work out in a big way. I'll give you another example from my banking days where we had a culture we called we had 7 habits. So there was something like smiling habits. So we expected to smile at internal and external customers. We had something we call the get together habit. So as a leader, you were expected to make sure guys meet like almost every Friday. We had other habits, you know, because there were many. And, you know, just setting those sort of rules also creates a belonging to sense, which is good for culture. People tend to be excited about those sort of habits because you make it fun. And also just what that does is that now it embraces everyone. So as leaders, it's to sit down and say, how do we come up with rules or habits that take care of the introvert and the extrovert? So maybe it's to have the habit, everyone must speak habit. So to make sure if you have whatever meeting you have, you must have everyone speak. So even the introverted person has to, you know, get their 5 minutes or whatever. And then the other side is to also make use of breakout rooms. Sometimes people are uncomfortable with, you know, the bigger setting, but if you break people down into 2-3 people groups, then you find people can engage there. So to just be creative in that sense as well. And what I've also found to work is to have the 80-20 rule as a leader. So I'm a very extroverted person as an individual, as Faith, but I've had to learn over time to use that 80-20 rule. So every time I'm in a meeting with my team, I will remind myself that I speak 20% of the time, the team speaks 80% of the time. And what you find is, as a leader, you're the driver of the culture. So the more you move things in that way, the better it is to have people speak more than you do. Because I've also worked under bosses who get onto a call and speak 90% of the time, you know, so productivity goes down, people don't feel like they belong, and it affects things in so many ways. So when it comes to well-being, I think it's a culture thing, like I've explained, and I think I've given examples. I know I just lost my dad like 2 months ago in the month of June. It shook my entire world. We work remotely, yes, and and you can come to the office intermittently. But I remember when I came back to the office, my boss called me into her office and she was like, do you need more time? Do you feel you need more time? And I was like, yes, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And A, I was given more time. Two, she quickly introduced me to our internal like therapy like package that we have, which is also fantastic to just set up for your teams. And through the most difficult season of my life, just my leader stopping to make sure that I was okay meant a lot, So getting to understand what people are going through, setting up things around that, also works in a big way, whether it's leave days, whether it's having therapy sessions, because therapy could be expensive for some people. Just thinking about the full circle really helps in terms of well-being. But I think if we are authentic leaders, that sorts out half of well-being, just in terms of thinking about everyone and thinking of everyone as a human being. I think that's it for me, Nick.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Faith. And I really identify with most of the points you put across, especially the 80-20, but also creating those safety spaces where people can talk and tell you what they feel without holding back. And guys can actually read their leader, very easily. So they know whether you're the kind of person who really cares or the one who just talks or trying to do because HR has said that you have to engage your team, you have to call them, you have to find out if they're okay. But whether you're really authentic is another story. So people can actually tell. That brings me to this other situation where, when you work from home or work remotely, sometimes it's also saying you live at work, right? And it becomes very difficult sometimes to disconnect between getting that balance of both personal and work. At what point do you tell yourself now it's now my me time, work is now done for the day? I always found myself in that temptation of going and burning hours, putting quite a bit of hours, because you're in the comfort of your home, right? So when is the right time to disconnect, and what's the best way to do that? Vivian?
Thank you. And it is true. When you work remotely, you will put in more hours. It goes without saying. You will find yourself stretching yourself because you'll say, I'll finalize this. I don't need to be in traffic. Where do you put a full stop is now where I will pick through where Faith is saying, how do you engage? When do you check in? And sometimes even what we see in HR, the leaders will check in, but who checks on the leader? So the leader will check in on their teams. The leader will report to the board. The leader will be really stretched. Who checks in on the leader? So what we have created is a buddy system among the leaders. It's just also like a stopgap measure, just to ask yourself, okay, we are running teams, where are we and how are you doing? So just one of the ways ensuring that is a balance. Number two, in terms of employees are putting a full stop, especially we also have our IT team, and we also have a younger Gen Z workforce who are able also to work very well when they're saying it's less quiet. But we also have the other ones who also have children, and they're like maybe to drop the children, then come back and continue working. And because they drop the children maybe to school or they pick them, they will want to put in more hours. So what we have been able to do in terms of your work practice is ensure that you have your Google documents and you save your work in your Google documents. So among yourselves, and the beauty is when you put in that work at that time, it will not change. We will see when the corrections were done by who and when. When we see it is the departmental now will come and help us. When we see someone is putting in a lot of work, past 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Sundays you're working. Sundays you're sending us email. Saturdays you're sending us email. Now, of course, as HR, we intervene. We work with a team called Lyra. Lyra is based in South Africa. Our head office is based in South Africa. They support us through our counseling sessions because we have already engaged them and we have given them a contract. We'll reach out to them. They'll reach out to you. They have an independent number. They'll be able to call you. Hi, my name is Nick from Lyra, and we just want to check in terms of your well-being. Would like to take 5-10 minutes of your time. Please schedule a time. If the employee keeps saying they're busy, they escalate it to HR, meaning we have kind of outsourced someone to take care of our employees. Because again, we're in the financial industry and we know how intense it can be when it is numbers and getting the right numbers and the kind of pressure that they have to deliver the numbers. You're working remotely, but you have to deliver the numbers. Or even maybe you could be in sales and you need to meet clients, and yes, you go meet clients and go and do your reports remotely, but there's a lot of pressure in terms of meeting your targets. So again, we will have the check-ins. Not everybody will go through that, but we'll just find out how best do you do that. Then we have, after every second month, a webinar, and it's almost we can say master attend webinar, and it's done by our medical team. We have different topics that are very captivating. We will talk about safety at home and safety at the workplace, where we'll say that if you put your laptop next to coffee, a child can spill it, and just to find in terms of safety. And then we ask you, you give scenarios, we have breakout rooms, we have jokes. So after every 2 months, we have our own ways of internal training, just to tell you. Sometimes you can just even bring someone who, like the last time we had someone who was just speaking in terms of how do you place your laptops and how do you sit. We gave our, during COVID, employees were given a chance to buy chairs at a discounted price, orthopedic chairs, so that you can be able to sit. But of course, with time, wear and tear, you're in the house, someone can decide to pick that chair and you've been sitting on a chair that is not comfortable. So how do we able to support you? So during these conversations, we will speak in terms of the dangers of even sitting on a bad chair. Dangers of how do you place your laptop to be upright with you, or your desktop if you're working with a desktop. So we'll have different speakers after every 2 months to engage with you, to just tell you they need to be a stop. Then lastly, we have financial literacy programs. The financial literacy programs motivate you to think that as much as I am working, am I thinking about my pension? Am I thinking about my investments? Am I thinking about what else can I be able to do? Because money will never be enough. And especially because we have a very young group. The young group is motivated to work extra hours. The way Nick was saying, we do not want to know what they do in the hours as long as they deliver. So we're telling them it's important. Yes, you get that money, but at what cost? Your health? And even if you get that money and you cannot be able to sustain, you cannot be able to utilize it, what is it in need for? So we just find ways internally of how to ensure that employees are engaged and productivity is checked. And then again, we just want to find out how best are you utilized and when do you have a stop gap. And that one especially, Google Docs really help us. I'll stop there for now, Nick.
Yeah. I really like how you found a way of going around it and engaging all levels of employees, so right from the leaders as well, the buddy system, and also the teams and the peers, just ensuring that at least everyone has a chance to feel part of this opportunity to share and give their best, but also feel engaged, be part of the team. I like also the professional bit that you added with the therapists. The webinars that you guys have, they keep this ball rolling, and I think some of these things are very basic. Sometimes we just assume that even something as simple as just how to use it. For how long should you face a screen? How far should that laptop be from your from your face or from your eyes? How much light should you be exposed to for what duration of time? So very basic things, but I think it goes a long way. So thanks for that. I think related to that, I have a question on the chat. Grace is asking, and maybe this one will touch on to what Faith had mentioned. How do you handle divergent personalities? So especially employees who are introverted and not team players remotely. There are people who, even if you speak 20% Faith and they will not even speak a word. You give everybody a chance, but these are the guys who are always like, nothing from my end. And it is nothing from my end for the whole year. They haven't spoken a word. And they're also part of this team. And you realize that this is becoming a pattern. And sometimes, it's only in those meetings, but probably outside in another environment, they're very active. So how do you handle that, especially for the introverted ones?
I had read this question, so in my response, I hope I'm not repeating myself because I sort of answered it. And I was giving the thoughts of having like the breakout areas, so then that way you can be able to have smaller rooms, because what you find is that a lot of introverted people don't do well with big crowds, but will work very well on one-on-ones or in a smaller setting. And I also said just to have the habits, like where you say everyone must speak in this meeting. And so you give that chance to everyone to be able to say something and all that. And I think probably the other thing I could add is I keep saying that more innovations happen, and it's a better culture where people feel psychologically safe to speak, and that's usually an environment built by leaders. So if we're in a meeting like this and let's say Kezia says something and I'm like, that's ridiculous, how can you say that? Like, did you wake up on the right side of your bed? How would you say that? And you have a degree? There are all these things that leaders could say in a meeting. And what that does, it sends a message. And tomorrow, if the leader asks something, then Kezia will not answer, because then you totally discourage them. And now what happens is that not only won't Kezia speak, but everybody else will not speak, because they all fear to go through the same backlash. And so what you find is that even in teams where there are extroverted people, they end up being quiet. And I experienced this for almost a year. And what you notice is that you become like, it's an office where everyone is just quiet, and you go into meetings or town halls and no one is speaking. So it's very important also as a leader to learn, just how to encourage people to speak, not an 8-4-4 system kind of thing where your answer has to be right, but that people could give suggestions, etc. And even though they're not right, they're still taken in, especially if you want to innovate and come up with new products and have people open to say what sounds silly but lead to an innovation. You have to be able to be open to people making mistakes and people fully expressing themselves to be able to see success. And I think also what I found in, especially when it comes to remote working, is where people, even the introverted people who maybe won't put on their video and speak, is to use chats. You talked about Teams, to just be able to do check-ins even on conversation, and to say, hi, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm thinking about this project, etc. And if you tell guys that you must communicate to me maybe at 12 and at 5, then whether you're introverted or not, you have to be able to do that. And as a leader, I can take all that feedback and make decisions with it, etc. I remember in one of the places I've worked, we had an impressive like online system where we had to put in all our activities for the day. So whether I had a call at 8 to 9 and then this or the other, so by Friday, all your activities have to be in. And this system would do like a summary of that and share that to the leadership. And what you find is that because I know I have to key in these things, then I have to put in my work and my input into my work. And that also covers introverted people. And finally, I know we think this is use of budget and maybe budget not being used well, but I find such power in things like team building, where you go offsite and people, you have like a neutral party come in and facilitate fun games and things like that that involve everyone. Then people get out of their cocoons. And I find that, apart from what a lot of organizations do with the Christmas parties, where people just come, have a good laugh, get drunk, and nothing happens, when you're able to put together well thought out team buildings with activities that teach trust, that teach openness, that encourage that everyone and every person's input is important, whether it's an intern, etc. I have seen great value and a building of such beautiful culture and relationship among people. And so if you're even running 100% remote teams, every once in a while having, those sort of team buildings, bringing everyone in, and someone going like, oh, this is how you look in real life. We see you till here, kumbe, you're so slim, kumbe, you're, then that's where people get to engage as human beings apart from the screens. And I think it's such a powerful tool to now bring out all these personalities in real sense, because even an introvert has their strengths, it's just that for the extrovert, maybe they're pushing themselves forward. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You bring about, so very, very, very important bit you bring there. I mean, I think everyone has their own strengths. I think as a leader, you need to just understand your team really well and optimize each person's strength where it's required. Because then you're able to bring out the best in everyone. So like, a couple of examples you've given, which are very, very practical, and I really like how that comes out. I used to work for an organization where we say, we fail fast. So failure is allowed. It's not a sign of weakness. And, because as you fail, you learn and you pick up really quickly. And even in a remote situation, you can also still encourage some of the people who speak least in meetings to lead in some projects and then front them to the right people, especially decision makers, because some of them could be very, very talented, working behind the computers or behind the desk. But then because they don't talk much, you don't give them enough airtime. But once you give them that airtime, they can actually surprise you. And that brings me now to the next point around learning and development. How do we continue this continuous? I mean, would we support continuous learning and upskilling for remote teams, just to ensure that, you're moving from one level to another, as much as you are not all in the same office, and you're able to differentiate, the development tracks. So how do you support that development for teams within a remote working environment?
Okay. For us as a business, it's something that has been doing and is continuing. 3 times in a year, we have compulsory exams. We have trainings that have a quiz. People call it exams, but it's a quiz. And our pass mark for the quiz is 80%. And you can be able to attempt up to 4 times. After 4 times, you'll be able to be given a month, then you'll be able to redo the quiz. So the quiz are mainly customer made per department. So the trainings are actually also inbuilt. We have been able to partner with a few learning institutions. This is the first time that I'm in an institution whereby this has been customer made. Being a financial industry, our ALM, the anti-money laundering, is very key for us. That one cuts across everybody. So every 3 times in a year, you'll be able to take those trainings. You'll be able to sit for the quizzes, 80% pass mark. You don't, you retake, meaning that you'll be able to read. And it's things that you work practically. Then we have the ones that are mainly customer made per different department. Again, that one is inbuilt and it is triggered. So it comes from the human capital culture. There's a whole department that just sets up in terms of training. So they have a training program. It will run for the 12 months, but it will be it's cascaded. After every 2 months, there's a training. After every 2 months, there's a training. So there's one training that cuts across all the employees. And then we also have trainings that are customer made. And you get a prompt on your email. If you do not do it, it is escalated to your boss that you did not partake the training. And it's in the portal. So like right now, our performance is in the portal. Your pay slips are in the portal. The training is in a portal. So you'll just get a prompt to enter into the portal. Previously, again, where I had worked, initially, we also had a lot of training, but the training was in terms of agile teams. And again, that was the first time I was working with agile, and just between COVID and getting out of COVID. So having agile teams was very good, meaning that they will get different people from different departments and you will work remotely on a project. And how do you get to know one another and what is that project entail? Again, there were also quizzes and trainings in terms of how is a project, what are the demographics of a project, what challenges are there, and you can all be able to learn. And mainly those ones were facilitated in-house, and it was very easy. Then of course we have the other trainings that are outside. The outside trainings are also very important, even for the ones who are working remotely. So if the organization has a budget, I always recommend, please ensure that at least everybody gets a training. And sometimes if also your organization has a budget, ensure that they can go training out of the office and meet other people outside. Because when they will have that 1 day or 2 day, they will impact, questions will be asked, they will have tea, they will network. So for us, it's both internally, virtual, ensuring that there's a test that is done so that there's some seriousness and accountability. And then using the budget, we ensure people undertake. Then lastly, CPDs. If you work in an organization whereby people are supposed to earn CPDs to be of good standing, there are companies like where we are, we actually pay for those CPDs. Why is it important? Your professional development is key. Because if you just remain having the same, just like a child who doesn't, maybe it only takes porridge, they'll become malnourished. Nowadays, we don't have it so much. There used to be a disease called kwashiorkor. So that's what we always say. If you don't train people, if you don't upskill them, they will end up having kwashiorkor. That's my technique.
Great.
Thanks, Nick. I just, when Vivian was speaking, I just thought about, that L&D is also a fantastic way to drive productivity, and also for remote workers when your teams are working remotely. And what I mean is, when it comes to productivity, you can dangle any type of carrot. I have led sales teams, and I think one of the hardest teams to motivate is salespeople, because it's a numbers game. So if I hit my target, you best have something good for me to motivate me to keep going. And of course, maybe you're giving the bonus and commission, but sometimes that's not enough, especially for high performers. And so things like working remotely could be a reward, where you can imagine if you're a team where everyone has to come to the office, maybe you get 1 day at home and you tell that person you can work home for 1 week as part of your reward, apart from, the commissions and bonus you get. That's a fantastic benefit. And I think learning and development, I personally see it where it is a benefit for the employee. And I'll give you an example. I know when you're doing my introduction, you talked about the executive MBA I did at Yale and at University of California. So in one of the organizations I worked for, they had the normal trainings that you can do that everybody's doing, but they had like highly regarded trainings with Ivy League schools like the Harvards, MITs, Yale, that were attached to performance. And so learning and development can also be a way to motivate people. And I remember I did these trainings during COVID. So during COVID, what they did was like, how do we make sure people are working? How do we make sure there's productivity? So they were like, apart from the normal benefits, you'll get an opportunity to do a fully paid executive MBA. And so what you find is that you could do learning and development where it's to tick a box. You want everybody trained on good customer service, everybody trained on this or the other. but everybody wants to grow. So to be able to help with that growth, then you can set up exciting opportunities, in those sort of Ivy League schools, etc., and then use that as a motivation for productivity. And so I'd work during the day, and because these were American universities, then from around 7 p.m. I'd have my classes and do that, which was also very good use of my time during COVID. The other thing that I've seen work is also being able to think outside the box when it comes to learning and development. So learning and development can be like where you're talking about the customer service training as an example, to where you're training, like the Ivy League schools I've talked about, but there's mentorship, which is also learning and development. So what I've also seen is getting people sessions, so let's say the CEO of the company, or maybe the chair of a board, so where you're telling your team, if you do well, we'll get you a one-on-one lunch with the CEO, or a one-on-one lunch with a board member, and that, or even somebody outside that ecosystem. But what you're doing is you're ensuring someone is growing. See, that mentorship session with somebody who's grown through the career ladder, etc., also benefits people. And also a very easy benefit to actualize, because even though, let's say, that CEO is in the States, it can still be done remotely. And finally, when it comes to learning and development, I saw this work when I worked for Oracle, where, the head office was in the States. There's culture and strategies, and when the new year came in, they have to tell you this is the new strategy, etc. And it was all impressively done remotely. So towards the end of the year, all the executives, so let's say the global CEOs, COOs, CFOs, CHRO, etc., would record themselves defining their vision for the next year, and of course feeding from the CEO. All that is put in form of video, so that, let's say they say, okay, this year we are thinking going cloud, or we are focusing on Africa, and every leader is able to put into a video what that looks like for them. All those videos are disseminated to every country, all virtually. We all spend time learning the new strategy for that year, let's say 2024, 2025. And then, like Vivian was talking about, then we have tests, and they made the tests fun. So instead of it being an exam, because people are differently abled, some people do well in paper exams, some don't. So they'd have the paper exam, but they also would have you do a video. Now, like you do the video and you're like, I'm Faith, I work out of Kenya. And my understanding from watching the videos is that this is the strategy for the next year, and this is how I take part in it as Faith. And then you send that to your boss, and your boss would approve that. And even the system open for you for the next year after they've approved that you've understood what the strategy is. So also very impressive if you're running big teams and who are all over the country, to ensure strategies are cascaded to everyone. And that learning is both fun and effective, because you watch the CEO live and you listen to them share their dream, etc. So those 4 things have also worked for me when it comes to learning and development in relation to remote.
Yeah, I mean, impressive. I just like how you guys are very creative around that learning agenda, and especially being championed by the leaders. I think it drives the right messaging and culture to the teams below through the cascade, and then it speaks that this is really what we really care about. So it's not just being thrown to you that, hey, if you don't get to this pass mark, then there are consequences. But at least encouraging people to start embracing it. I think a couple of organizations also use this as an attraction. Also to retain people, and even for people who are regarded as high potential, probably they have a certain package that then they would access for certain courses or certain institutions, or depending on really where they fall. So I just like that setup that you've described. Couple of great points coming through. I just want to pause there for a minute. I don't know, Kezia, if we have any additional comments on the chat, any questions, so that we
Yes,
don't lose
Nick.
train. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have some questions on the chat. There's Grace Musolo, wants to know, what strategies do you recommend for mental health for virtual employees? I think that's something that we really need to talk about.
I thought Vivian probably must have touched on it a bit. Maybe if you just want to do a quick recap.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Grace, for bringing that up. One thing that is dominant, that when you work remotely, you will get lonely. And the more you work, the more hours you put, the more lonely you'll become. And the work pressure becomes so much. And then you'll start getting the fatigue and start asking yourself, am I in the right job? The pressure becomes so hard. If you're in sales, you're working remotely, you're not having touch with your teams, and all these things sum up to what we actually calling it mental health. Of course, initially, we used to know mental health is when someone is mad and they needed to go to Mathare Hospital to be assisted. But we are redefining what mental health is. And in our space at working remotely, when we look at mental health, these are the aspects that come with that work. When we work remotely, anxiety builds. People even get anxiety attacks when they're told they'll be going to a meeting. I know even Faith had mentioned that you can be able to tell people to speak. You can tell people to put on their cameras. You'll tell them to deliver. They're unable to do it. Maybe they got time bad. They just had too many things. And now anxiety comes in, panic attack comes in. And with time, they start feeling lonely again. Then there's also that other aspect of people go through different seasons of their life. Maybe this person is single and it's okay for them to be single, but maybe there's another person who will be in a relationship. They could be in marriage, or they could be in a relationship with someone. And that relationship is very stressful on their side. So again, that one added, because they're remotely, they don't have anyone to talk to, builds that into it, and also the deadlines. Then again, there's also the issue in terms of depression. So the depression can come in in terms of financial. You could be going through a financial difficulty time. And when you go through a financial difficulty time, you are remote, you need to work. A few of the other people have been able to engage with other nightlife or night work, or as you do your side jobs on the side, you don't rest well, you're working long hours. Even when that money comes, it's not enough. Then you start getting depressed in terms of your resources. So how do we handle that? So the first thing, again, what we do is that's the reason why we signed up with the company called Lyra. Lyra is one of the places whereby they give these talks. That's the first one. Secondly, the way I had mentioned, for us, after every 2 months, we have check-in talks, wellness talks. We have wellness talks, we have financial literacy talks, we have all these other talks. Then again, though you work remotely, our policy is very clear. 1 day in a week, all the teams must be there. So even if you work 2 days remotely, or 3 days remotely, or 1 day remotely, 1 day in a week, all teams must come to the office. We also got resistance. There's some people who are saying, no, I can deliver. But this is also just another way of just checking up on the teams, so that the teams can come back and just get to know and understand the team dynamics. So that we put it in the policy, so that wherever you are, ensure that you come. And when you're in that office for that 1 day, you might not talk. You could be an introvert, you could be an extrovert, but you're within the team. Then also in terms of mental health, we also have people, maybe during the time you're working remotely, again, maybe you would have lost a loved one and you didn't have a place to really work, because work will continue and the demands will be there. They'll give you they'll give you your leave. And especially after your leave days are over, they will expect you to come and pick up from there, and demands are there, and maybe you have not healed. Again, during that time, I really liked what Faith has said. The leaders are checking up on you. For us, not only is it the leaders, but also your team, because you have created a system whereby the teams check up on you. Then again, as I sum up, Nick, they are also within our teams, and it's something that happens in all organizations, a lot of backstabbing and witch hunting among employees, whereby you are working, but you just know two or three people will ensure that they go and report you to the boss, ensure that your life becomes difficult, and you report it to HR, and HR write those small letters or warning letters and shock cause letters, and you really get scared. That also affects your mental health. So team dynamics, we also appreciate are there. Not everybody in the workplace, as much as you're saying good things, not everybody in the workplace will speak highly of you, will appreciate you. So for us, again, what we always request is we find an inner, deeper meaning. So there's the issue of the team, and then there's the issue of building yourself. So we have something called an IDP, Individual Development Plan. At the beginning of your year, you'll set a plan for the company. This is what I wish the company to train me, the company to set my goals, to get a mentor. But we also request you also do an IDP, Individual Development Plan. That one you can share with us or not. But you'll ask yourself, so this year, what would you like to do? Maybe I'd like to save 2,000 every year. And at the end of the year, I'd like to buy my child a bike. So someone will be just checking how much is in your account. Or somebody will just say, me, I've never gone to Masai Mara, so I will be saving 3,000, 4,000. And you ask, hey, by the way, have you found a place? Have you been able to? It gives you some light in terms of what else do I want to do. There's some people who say, Maguta, I want to buy a plot. Yes, it's very common among us, especially in our age. So again, you ask yourself, hey, how far are we? Have you allocated a place? It becomes challenging. It says, this year I've not done much, but next year I will do something. So in terms of mental health, it's just accepting what are the depressors among ourselves, what are the things that we can be able to do, and what are the motivational factors. It's something that goes round. But then again, in terms of remote, is also check-in. And I really liked what Faith has said. Check-ins. Those check-ins are so important, just to ensure that our mental health is kept alive. Or it's kept at bay, sorry. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Wow. Amazing insights. Great. Yeah, so I think we have one more question on the chat, Kezia.
Yes, we do, Nick. Felix Kariuki wants to know top 3 or 5 cautions that you would recommend for consideration in avoiding pitfalls in remote working.
Any top ones, Faith, you can think of? Probably you had mentioned a couple of them.
Yeah, I can give it a try. So pitfalls, I think, like we said earlier, I think Vivian mentioned it and I did as well, that there's of course advantages of working remotely, but there are disadvantages as well. And so what you find is, of course, communication. You have to be very thorough, otherwise it becomes a very big issue. That's one. I'm just going through the pitfalls fast, and maybe we figure out how to mitigate them. If you think about health-wise, when you work from home, and I'm thinking when I do, then I just sit at my desk the whole day, and I have someone helping me bring my water and things like that, because you find yourself back to back in meetings the whole day. So you don't move around a lot like how you probably do in the office. And probably, I don't know how home settings are, they're not as huge as offices. So you're not walking out and taking a whole trek to go to the bathroom. In your house, it's probably the next room. Then if you think about aspects of engagement, so probably staff are not engaged as much as they should. And then you also find that there are so many interruptions at home, especially if you have children. Maybe it's easier because no one is looking at your screen, for you to have your Facebook screen, your Instagram screen. So when someone is talking monotone, you quickly shift to that, because there's no one at your back like it is in the office too, like man over what you're doing. And then now you find people get lonely. And we talked about that when we talk about well-being. You know, if you think about someone who's working alone, or maybe people, you know, you could still be in your office and lock everybody out, and, you know, it just affects you in that way. And then it also becomes difficult to prioritize work, you know, because maybe someone rings the bell. I don't know whether you've been in a meeting and someone says, excuse me, someone has rung the bell, etc. And so these pitfalls are real, but I think any organization that's forward thinking, because I think remote working is here to stay, and we're global citizens, so we are likely to work for global organizations more and more. I think it's so important to then set up ways of dealing with that, which is the question. And so just having clear communication strategies, and we talked about those, you know, the frequent check-ins and things like that. So then that way, the same way I'd walk up to someone on their desk and ask them, how is this going? Because I don't have that advantage remotely, then if you do those quick check-ins, then it helps. If you think about the loneliness, we talked about, again, check-ins, we talked about the therapy sessions that maybe HR has set up, etc., to just make sure people are engaged and are not lonely, etc. And then also the hybrid way of working then seems to work better. So then whether it's every week, it's half and half, or if someone works 2 weeks home, they have to come work 1 full week from the office, etc., then takes care of the loneliness, of the communication and all that. So the hybrid model, I think, has come to now sort out a lot of the remote issues that you'll find. And then now we talked about the team building, because then now you need to build trust and help people engage, so that when people meet the next time, they know, oh, Faith is this kind of a person, Vivian is this kind of a person. Then it makes it easier. And then finally, and I talked about it, is to make use of technology, whereby you're saying, you know, how do I make sure I have this system or the other? People put in their reports and I can be able to quickly see what that person has done using biometrics, so I can see this person logged in at this time but did nothing, or logged in and has put in 10 hours, etc. So to also take advantage of technology, because remote is a technical thing, and we're in this digital age, so just add on whether it's AI, etc., to now help you analyze data and build on the remote work. But I think remote is here to stay. It's the best way to build businesses. In most cases, you will find it's cheaper. And also, if you have talent, you want talent from another part of the world and you can't bring them in, what's the easiest way? You see organizations nowadays will pick call center people from India, technical people from India, yet they're based in Kenya or wherever in the world. So remote then helps. But Nick, I want to speak about something that's very close to my heart, and it's women, you know, because I think what remote working did, you know, before we'd say a lot of women drop off work because of, you know, having children, or because they're getting very senior and it's competing with their personal life. I think remote working also exposed women even more, and it became very difficult for a lot of women to continue working during COVID, because then now if you're home, then you have to be a mother and, you know, you have to do all these other things. Then it became very difficult. So I think anyone setting up remote working policies has to think about others, you know, and you have to think about women, because remote working is mostly happening at home, and the role of a woman at home is very different. So then now figuring out where the line is drawn becomes very difficult. You know, so I think, I know we haven't talked a lot about that, but I wanted to put that out there because there must be policymakers on this call to just think about women. And nowadays, there's women having children, there's women who are pregnant on maternity leave, there's women who are running homes, women are the caregivers, we're the ones taking care of our parents, our relatives who are unwell. There's women going through menopause, which is now becoming a serious issue. So how do we ensure we have breaks so that a woman can go and fund themselves because they're heating up because of menopause, have breaks because, you know, the women have menses, etc. So just to think about those policies, not only in the office when we have a mother's room, but even when it comes to remote working, because it's different for women.
Wow, thank you so much. And I think probably, Faith, you may also have answered the other question that is on the chat, which is around, is it okay to say within time we will not be having physical offices, people embracing virtual offices? I think it's remote work is here to stay. I think that's really where the shift is moving in the current work environment, and I think in the global economy. So it's something we can't run away from. And what a way to summarize the webinar. I think we are about 7 minutes past 7. I don't know, Faith, there is, sorry, not Faith, if there is anything pending on your side, but I just wanted to say that this has really been quite a timely conversation, very engaging. I think you've all witnessed from our wonderful panelists sharing, nuggets after nuggets. And all these things are things we experience on our day-to-day in our workplaces. And I think we keep learning, we keep improving, we keep challenging ourselves, building new work models, new business models. And some of these things are questions that we come across even on the board level, working teams, in our town halls. We face these questions as HR. So our biggest thing is how do we equip ourselves, even as a team, attending this webinar, so that tomorrow when you go into the town hall or meet the department or talk to those leaders, you're able to support them accordingly. So I think great timing, great forum, and really thanking you, Faith and Vivian, for your time. Not so sure if there is any burning questions or anyone wants to comment. One last word from any of our audience on the call. Anyone dying to say something before we call it to a close? I see we still have a couple of people on the call. Clearly this time has really run. I didn't see this coming. But that tells you something about the conversation. I think it's something that is very close to most of us. And, we interact with this from time to time. So, Kezia, Esther.
Yes, Nick. That was a very wonderful session. Thank you for the knowledge you've dropped on all of us. And we appreciate it. We appreciate our panelists. I would just like to say a little bit about Resource Associates for those who might be on the call and might not know what it is really about, because it's just seeing logos everywhere. So just to tell you a little bit about Resource Associates so that you get to know more about our company too. So Resource
Are you there?
Associate is a professional human resources and providing comprehensive and innovative management environment. So we're really trying to be in the loop about giving our clients innovative solutions. And some of our core values are professionalism, synergy, and ethical conduct. And these are values that we resonate with and we uphold in the assignments that we undertake. We have 5 major business lines that we majorly deal in. We have business transformation and management consultancy, talent search and selection solutions, learning and development solutions, as we've been speaking about through the webinar. We also offer assessment centers and organizational design and development solutions. So that is just a little bit about Resource Associates. And you can check us out, can look us, oh my God, you can have a look at our website and our online platforms on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and also on our website so that you can also learn more about us. And feel free to come by our offices in Kilimani or in Kindaruma Road at the Navigators Building and talk to us and, have some tea and discuss some of the solutions and help that you might need with us and our opinions. So yeah, thank you, Nick. That's all.
All right, thank you so much, Resource Associates, for this platform. Thank you so much, team, for staying with us until this hour. I really appreciate it. I hope that this has imparted some additional knowledge or insights into what we already know or something we knew that we are learning from this webinar today. This is our second webinar, and we'll be sharing this also on our socials as well, as we look forward to the third webinar series that will be communicated in the due course. But thank you so much, Resource Associates, for this. Probably I forgot to say in the beginning that Resource Associates actually was my very first employer when I started work as an intern. And so I'm an alumnus. I'm a very proud alumnus of everything that they do. So what Kezia has told you is exactly what they do, and they're a real powerhouse on all matters talent and organizational development. So thank you so much for the time. Keep well, keep safe, be okay. And it's just remember one thing, it's always okay not to be okay, okay? So many okays in one statement, but just know that it's always okay not to be okay. And I wish you a lovely evening ahead. And thank you for being great participants in this webinar.
Thank you all, and do have a good evening.
Thank you so much.